Zig coming in on the top. Today on the show, I'm talking to Adam Stevenson of Capitol Theatre, a rock group out of New Zealand who has a debuted album out called Hero's Journey. It's a concept record, and it's their first release in which the character in the album follows the hero's journey, a Joseph Campbell theory line of story writing, and I shouldn't say theory line, a Joseph Campbell philosophy of story writing, Carl Jungian philosophy of archetypes and how they fit in that story. They do it in such a way where they keep this rock record feel where it's like any song could be a single, but when put together, this narrative comes out. I talk with Adam, singer-songwriter from Capitol Theatre, and I caught him in between recording sessions in LA, and he hopped on a Zoom call. It's a quicker interview than those who are used to the talks we have on the show. Time crunch being one of them. He had a session to get to, and Zoom giving me the time limit. But it was a really fun chat. We got to geek out about their producer, Mike Klein, who produced Guns N' Roses, and some of the nuances in his way of capturing performance from the guys he's working with. And Adam gets into a really cool, detailed story about that, and nerding out about New Zealand and like just the idea of the hero's journey and how to make that musical. Because we see that a lot, but usually it's in the context of a film or a story. Not that music isn't one of those, but this was a really cool, insightful look into that. We're going to listen to the song Fait Accompli off Capitol Theatre's album Hero's Journey. Fait Accompli off Hero's Journey, the band's Capitol Theatre, available now on all streaming platforms. Check out the rest of the record. You can rate, review, subscribe to the podcast on one of the podcast platforms. It helps me keep talking to cool guests and sharing their insight with you. So without further ado, this is my conversation with Adam Stevenson. So jumping into it, I wanted to ask you guys about Capitol Cinema.
Capitol Cinema.
Yeah.
Are you talking about the Capitol Cinema in Auckland, or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's just like a beautiful old theatre in Auckland that I suppose it might have had something to do with inspiring our name, but it's just a really beautiful, cool old theatre, we at one point we had ownership of it, it's just. It kind of started kind of as probably it dropped the name Capitol into the forefront of our minds, and from there we kind of came about the name Capitol Theatre.
Nice. To own a theater though, that's pretty rad. Did you guys do any cool shows in that?
No, kind of. It was a little bit of a fleeting exercise, but our drummer Paul's very much involved in commercial property dealings. So we just we had that for a little bit, and then passed it on to someone else.
Oh, okay. Bummer. That'd be cool. There's some cool theaters in Cleveland that have you can tell at one time they were vaudeville, you know what I mean? Before they were movie theaters. So you're like, there's a little loft there. We could put a cool show on here.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we actually we're in Cleveland. We played at the Beachland Ballroom.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it was cool. Yeah, that was with 107 Cleveland.
Oh, very
the
cool.
radio station. Yeah.
Who else was on the bill? Was there any locals?
Oh, we just played a listener appreciation show just for some listeners that came out. It was a good vibe. Yeah, it was cool.
Very cool, very cool. We were just there yesterday with my group. I play in a band called Sea Level, letter C dash, and they had a devotion night. Devo's a big thing from Ohio, so they have a whole festival where they just worship Devo. It's pretty rad. But yeah, Beachland's a beautiful spot. So you guys go out of New Zealand a lot. Now, what's the New Zealand music scene like, and is it easy to kind of branch out of?
Yeah, it's very diverse, New Zealand, and it's and its culture and the music that comes out. So within kind of every niche, there's only so many kind of bands and stuff that are kicking about. So it's kind of close knit. And then bands do kind of do great things overseas from New Zealand. We've had a lot of successful kind of pop artists come out, I suppose. People like Lord and the Broods, I suppose, and Benny is another younger artist. All doing great things. There's a lot of cool things that New Zealanders do overseas. But yeah, I mean, I think it's in some ways it's hard sometimes for New Zealand bands to get like big labels behind them until they've got a good amount of momentum. I think probably just the relocation or like the commitment to being in certain territories, and it comes with a financial kind of commitment as well. So yeah, being all the way across the other side of the world, and I suppose in the last couple of years we've been pretty much locked down into our country, so we haven't been able to get out. So but yeah, I mean, I think New Zealand music is very healthy. It's very diverse.
That's amazing. It's so hard, man. It's just so hard to even play out of state. You know what I mean? Like in the states or in a like so to go across the world. I mean, that's incredible that you guys can do that. Um, so you guys started with a jam band or not jam band, a jam night, right?
Yeah.
And what's that? I think that's where me and my bass player met. Is at a mic night. And I
Yeah.
think there's a sacred specialness to open stages and letting people mingle and come up with stuff and just like try stuff and be able to fail in front of other musicians. Um,
Mm.
but I'm curious to what that looks like in New Zealand.
Yeah, I mean, well, that was just a night put together where you knew all the other musicians and stuff, and things were just pretty relaxed. It was always a good vibe, but yeah, we just one night the three of us put together and we just gelled and just jammed a bunch of different covers and things, and yeah, and we stayed in touch ever since and kept jamming. So yeah, you're right. It is a very nice way to meet other people, other musicians. It's a very, very unique thing to be learning each other musically.
Were you playing before meeting up with these guys? Were you singing and playing before, or like was this kind of just the magic moment it all happened?
No, I mean, all of us have been playing music all of our lives, really. From a young age. So, yeah, I mean, I've always had a music project going. Whether it just be on my own, singing at pubs or whatever, or just doing my own thing, or finding whoever I could, to jam with along the way. But yeah, when we met as Capitol Theatre, it was very much a good chemistry that we held on to and kept developing.
Very cool. Like the band's got a lot of energy. I get a lot of like Foo Fighter vibes, a lot of like this intense rock, which is not. It's not easy to develop that type of like like as a group to carry that energy. It isn't that easy. It's not. Maybe usually sometimes you get like a one guy that's all the way out there, and then you're trying to catch up. But as a unit, that's not an easy thing to do. So to find that group, that's a real special thing. Um, but like kind of so like before leaving that topic, I'm just curious, what were like some of the songs you guys were like working on or covering at this mic night? Like, what are some of the touching bases for Capitol Theater?
Yeah, well, you kind of referred to it. I mean, there would have been probably some Foo Fighters, Nirvana, but I'm just trying to think back to that. It might have been some Killers stuff, or just trying to think of some of those ones that we would have played back then. But it's just just good music. I mean, we also we then used to just jam and play like we used to play like for parties and things like that, and we would kind of just get a really broad spectrum of music together anyway. So like heaps of great songs from the past. Bands like Toto, or um, even like Doobie Brothers or CCR, the Beatles, the Eagles, like any of these bands that with great songs. We would actually learn those, and then so you get that benefit of understanding the songwriting and how these awesome songs that have connected with millions of people, how they are written. So I think we actually honed our skills early on with learning the great songs of the past.
Definitely. And like, well, that's I mean, I think that's really well pointed out, is like that music works for a reason. It conveys some emotional intent in its own way. From CCR to Toto, there's some emotional intent that's being conveyed specifically for each group, and being able to see what that is and learn from those skills to apply that to yourself. Because it's kind of like the whole, I'm really into Bruce Lee, the idea of expressing yourself with your body when you need to, with whatever it may be. If it's a kick or a punch, you're pushing it right there. So to be able to find the emotional intent and find how it works for you is like the endless journey of any type of artist. So that
Yeah.
like that totally checks out. What were some like kind of early like examples that conveyed themselves to you in that way? Like if it's like seeing how CCR works songwriting wise,
Yeah.
or Nirvana.
Yeah. Well, one thing I like about music, or songwriting, I think, is when you get the magical meeting of lyrical meaning and the sonic kind of whatever's happening sonically or rhythmically. And I always point to artists like Paul McCartney is probably the best at it. If you think about, I don't know, you just think about a song like "Long and Winding Road," and the way that the chord progression meanders almost like a winding road, Or Don Henley is an amazing kind of, that kind of they're very very clever at understanding the mood of the song and marrying up the meaning at the same time.
Yeah.
A song like Hotel California, it's its own entity, right? It's the whole thing in its entirety is it's just Hotel California. It's got a vibe to it from the intro right out to the lead at the end.
Right. What's it? So what I found interesting about your guys' record, A Hero's Journey, is it's this concept record, and like it follows the whole idea of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, from what I can tell. Like, but everything's catchy, which is, there's a lot of concept records, but to make it sing and be as catchy as each part isn't easy to do. So I guess my question with that is, when did like kind of concept writing and concepts appeal to the band, and were there any like influential concept albums that brought you to want to do something like this?
Yeah, it wasn't so much that we. Yeah, it wasn't so much that like we're not like a massive. We didn't necessarily set out to always do concept albums, but it just kind of fell into place somehow. And I just think I just got kind of caught up in learning about what Joseph Campbell's kind of overarching kind of message was, which was that storytelling throughout time follows that hero's journey archetype, and then I just kind of thought, well, what we wanted to do was shape an album, so that we could kind of give ourselves license to writing, like a battle song, which we have some high energy songs in there, but then also have license to pull back and be a bit more delicate. So that was kind of the motivation behind it, to create an interesting series of 10 songs. But given that it was our first album as well, we really wanted to also put out 10 very consumable songs, because we actually didn't know which of the 10 we might even want to take to radio or anything. So there was definitely commercial sensibilities in that sense. So we didn't, and because it was our first album, we just wanted to give ourselves a really good shot of just having 10 great songs that might have consideration for radio as well. So that was so you don't get the kind of Pink Floydy kind of really embellished deep kind of prog rock stuff at all. But so album 2 though, we've probably gone, which we're recording at the moment. We are giving ourselves a bit more license because we kind of know what we're doing now. So there's probably some more expressive songs that are coming out in the second album, but the first album is it's very good. There's nice variation between the songs, and you say they're all catchy. Yeah, we kind of did write them with the intention that any one of them could be released as a single.
I think that's amazing because that's harder to do. Like, you can kind of make a concept a little clearer if there's more space, and like you can be like, well, this is the call to action clearly or whatever when you're following the circle, right? But to do it in a way like you guys did, where everyone is its own, start and finish, its own little circle within the big circle of the hero's journey, I think is more challenging to do. And to come out with it being your first one, so this is what you're pushing to certain markets too. So that's like 3 levels of a difficult thing to do, and I think that do it like how you guys did, where it does follow this concept and each one stands on their own, is amazing.
Yeah. But that probably comes back to that idea of once you've got a notch on the hero's journey, and let's say it's it's the call to adventure, and we've got a song called Second Skin, which is quite a ballady type of song. Starts off with piano and it's quite quiet, and then it crescendos out. But in its entirety, it's its own song, and it does have that kind of connection between the lyric, and all of them really should be creating the right mood for the moment, and then the lyrics should be conveying what's going on. So and our producer Mike Klink, that's what he noticed. That's what he liked about it. He said, every song is actually its own journey. It's its own story within a connected series of events. So that's definitely something that we always try and do. Every song's got to have its own thing, its own entity, its own world. Each song is its own little world.
That's amazing. I think you guys did an incredible job with it. Did that kind of like help as far as like honing in like the songwriting, having like this specific? Because I don't know, some people have like that thing where they write every day and whatever, that's the nugget they take to the band, or like does having this narrative help that process?
Yeah. I reckon. I think it definitely helped us because especially we were creating the band from scratch at that point. So it definitely helped us to organize our thoughts and we would have written 3 or 4 contenders for a certain part on the journey, so then we would be able to be like, well, which one sounds more like a call to adventure, or which one sounds more like the battle scene, or what's the realization moment? Where's our realization song? And it has to be a beautiful piano ballad. Like where's the intro piano hook? Where have we written it yet? And all that stuff. So it is kind of was a little bit like a very large template to work from.
That's very cool. Which one was the hardest kind of part to write? Was it more of the tender, like the meeting of the goddess, or which step in the hero's journey was the hardest one to decide as a group?
Well, I think that the very end part, which was kind of like the kind of revelation part,
right?
And it's the last song in our album is it's a little bit it's a kind of probably a different example of it's almost, if you're watching a stage show, it very much would be like the finale sounding kind of thing where, all the cast and characters come on and take a bow, and it's, it is a bit like that. And that's where we were kind of wondering whether or not it's, if it was Capitol Theatre enough, because it is a little bit probably flamboyant in a way, but we kind of committed to it. We're like, yeah, no, it sounds like the end of an album. It's kind of almost uplifting, and it, yeah, brings on those cues of like, oh yeah, this is the end of, this is the end of the show kind of thing. So yeah, and we just kind of committed to it and stuck with it, and it's a great song. I mean, it kind of, yeah, it sounds, there's probably some kind of Queen esque references in that one. Probably more, yeah, things like that. But yeah, but yeah, we just kind of committed to writing and honing in on what kind of songs we had kicking about and placing them in the right order and making sure that they were as strong as possible.
Nice. Yeah, it's hard to write a concept anything as a group, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of great concept records, but you can kind of pin it to a guy like a Roger Waters or a Kanye West, or you know what I mean? You can pin it to the mad scientist. But I really that's really inspiring to hear how you guys kind of went about it, putting it up as a group and kind of bringing multiple takes on each segment to it. And I'd imagine with like any writer for a play or for a TV or for a concept of any sort, the return home, the end point, which the story comes back with a moral and a changed character, is always going to be the most difficult. Like, and it just even in human life, when you're trying to like change your whatever habits you have or whatever, that point of getting to it is the hardest part. So that makes sense that would be like the stickiest one to figure out. Very cool.
Yeah,
Um, so working with Mike, he's got some accolades to his name, my friend. Like with Guns N' Roses
yeah,
and such. What was some kind
yeah.
of crazy lessons like working with him?
Um, well, it was interesting because we started off working with him in LA,
Right.
and then we had to work with him remotely because of COVID. Because so we got our recording got shut down because LA went into lockdown, and then we had to get back to New Zealand. So um, we ended up having a very lengthy long term relationship, finishing off the album via Zoom calls and yeah, um, logging into live recording sessions. So we're doing all that remotely. So what now? We're back in LA now, recording our second album with him. And what I know now, and what he was always saying was, how much more effective he can be when he's there with us, directing us, and talking to us in person. And that's what I've really found on this album. It's just how kind of precise like he can be if he's directing me in a vocal session. Just really his ear and what he picks up on and what he gets out of a vocal session. You don't even really know it at the time, but then when you hear it back and you can hear how he has, actually produced you, you hear it's quite a funny kind of feeling because when you're hearing your vocal come back and you kind of can't. It almost it's almost like he's used my vocal instrument without me knowing it. Because he's massaged it, he's directed and he's asked for certain things, and you're like, I don't know where this is going or how it's gonna be. But then you hear it back and you're like, wow, that's I didn't know that that's what we got, but he got it, and he always has the vision, I think, that he wants to get.
That's when you're because I've recorded a lot of vocals, and you get in that room and that red light comes on, and that's when all the flubs happen. You get really in your head. Hold on, let me listen to it again. Are you sure? Did I say the word weird? Was that on time? Was that off pitch? You really like That's when the final draft really happens, is when you're recording the vocals, and it's hard, like you're saying, because he's hearing the finished thing, and you're in there trying to hear it. So that's really cool that you can trust where he's going with it. What are like some
Yeah.
kind of like specific things like he like will he be like more guttural or more like the is it more musical based he's saying, or is he more like just kind of like how you pronounce things, or how you like what are some like kind of interesting directions you didn't think were going to land where they land that might guide you through?
I think there's a lot of he's looking for sometimes just little inflections.
Yeah.
I think he knows my voice, and he would, I guess anyone he works with, he knows the characteristics quite acutely, I think. And I think there's certain, like, he's like emotion out of a line, so looking at the meaning of the line, and then there might be, he's looking for a little inflection. And it's funny because we might go over a line like 10 times, or even just a little bit. He's like, I just want this little bit. I want this little thing to sound just like this. I want that little nuance on that word. And he's like, I know you can give it to me. And then and I'm thinking, okay, I think I know what he wants, and he's just trying to deliver. He's just at the fish and chip shop putting in an order, man, and I'm just out the back cooking.
That's awesome. That's so cool though, because there's like, I don't know, it's one of those things you don't realize, that little bit in however he may be describing how the ornament, that inflection or that bit of that line, how it decorates the whole thing. That's so
Mm,
cool. That's very cool. Um,
mm.
so with this next batch of tunes, is it following like a concept thing as well?
It will be. It's very much so. We got into like the tarot cards and
Oh,
the
snap.
major
Yeah, yeah.
arcana, and then we that gave us a lot of kind of inspiration for some of the songs. It's in it, but we're at the moment we're recording more songs than we need. Um, and yeah, we'll just be sitting down and taking stock of what we've got, and where these ones kind of fit in somewhat of an order. But we've got a pretty strong kind of visual identity, and then sonically we know where it's gone. We know how we're tracking, from Hero's Journey through to the second album. And I think it starts drawing a bit of a line as to where the band will head, even for album 3. I think we can start seeing now
Yeah.
how we'll progress. But definitely it's we've also been a little bit, I suppose, motivated, because we've been booked on some festivals next year in the States. And so that one of them is Welcome to Rockville, um, and that's quite a big one. And I think we start projecting and kind of thinking about how the band's going to sound at a festival. And you also, we want to be always, we want to be Capitol Theatre. Is that there's a lot of kind of meaning that we always come back to. What is Capitol Theatre? And it's like larger than, large theatrics and bold kind of rock music. So that also kind of informs a little bit of the energy of the songs that we're bringing to the table as well. We want them to really give people a good time when we're at these festivals.
That's really cool. I think it's cool that you guys constantly kind of have that self-reflection, that self-check of where we are, who we are, because that's important. That's an important like thing to keep in mind. What are we doing? Why do we do this? And those are questions that sometimes when you're like going nonstop and working endlessly, you may forget. That's that kind of self-check-in. And to have that as a group, that's phenomenal. Like that's patching any future problems in the right way. Very cool. And
Yeah,
I like the idea of Capitol Theater itself, like the kind of like I think heard you guys talk about it in another interview or when I was doing my research or an article, but like the idea of like what role do you play in making capital? You know what I mean? Like that's such a like really well thought out concept, and I was like, that's cool.
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it's good to have a band name that can well, it can make people think,
Yeah,
wonder what does that mean, and it can mean various things. Um, but um, but yeah, I mean, obviously the idea that there's theatrics of money at play um, every day for everyone. How do you make your money? How do you spend your money? Why do you have no money? Why do some people have shitloads of money?
right.
Um, that so there's that's Capital Theatre, and but then for us also it's a it's a very good kind of building block for us, like or it's a sense check always. If we're putting out a music video or we're doing something and we come back and we ask ourselves, is that Capital Theatre? Is that embellished theatrics? Is it ticking that Capital Theatre box? We always kind of come back to the name and ask ourselves, you know, is it Capital Theatre or not?
I think that's beautiful. That's super cool. And like, and it's interesting too. Does money or does any of that wealth, that capital, have importance in this role or in this play in our which is your life, right? Or like, I know I'm jumping off the concept and like the cool check-in you guys have. I don't want to confuse the two. I think the cool check-in's spot on, but also that leaves that open end question, right? And like, and it's interesting like to even pose it, but moving and even as a because music has a lot of money behind it and like what's it moving towards and like I don't know, it's a really well thought out name. Like when I read it, it
Mhm.
clicked. I was like, that's. But kind of jumping into the idea of like tarot and the hero's journey. Do you guys like read a lot? What kind of brings up these concepts that the whole band resonates with?
Yeah, I suppose we get into kind of spirituality,
Okay.
you know.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, yeah, I mean, we do read, all sorts of things. We keep up with the Wall Street Journal. We keep up with music magazines. We keep up with spirituality books, and just but all sorts. I mean, I'm doing a psychology course, and
Oh yeah.
I'm just learning about the brain.
Nice. That's cool.
I don't know, Paul, our drummer, he walks around with a stack of books, um, you know,
That's
about
awesome.
stuff, probably quantum physics and
Yeah.
crap like that.
That's awesome.
Um,
Um, do you ever get
yeah,
into Carl
yeah,
Jung?
yeah, yeah.
Because he's
Well,
got the
yeah,
whole
yeah,
hero's journey thing kind of too.
yeah, yeah. He was. Well, I think he instigated what Joseph Campbell then went on to really kind of like crystallize as the
Yeah.
the hero's journey. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, no, like I studied NMT. I went to Cleveland State for music therapy, and NMT is neurologic music therapy. So some as
Mm,
far as like being a musician and being curious about the brain, I can't recommend diving into like Your Brain on Music by Daniel
oh, yeah.
Levitin. Like those are as far as psych and like or Oliver Stacks has got a ton of really interesting books with music in the brain. It's fascinating.
Nice.
It's fascinating
Yeah.
stuff. And there's this really cool book called Quantum, the Physics of Jazz, where it takes like
Oh, cool.
quantum physics ideas and it ties it to
Yeah.
jazz theory. You know, it's
Nice.
pretty like far out but interesting stuff. Um,
Awesome.
awesome.
Awesome. Was that Oliver Stack's? I was just trying to remember one of his other books. Was he the one that wrote the one the man who mistook his wife for a hat?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. He's got
That's a good concept.
it is. It is. He's got a whole. It's called musicphilia. I think is it's all these case studies about people that like someone who can't hear music and like or can't like they're all real specific little stories and I think if you're into that I think you'll dig it.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Awesome,
Yeah.
man. Well, hey, Adam, I know I got a timer here that says I'm about to run out of time with you, because I only got the 40 minutes, but I really appreciate your time, my friend. Thank you so much for
Uh,
taking time out of your recording time to hang out and chat with me. And I look forward to hearing the new
cool, man.
record.
Oh, that was great, man. No, I enjoyed your deep line of questioning. It was cool.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Sometimes I'm afraid I put people off with it, and they're like, just ask me about the record. So I appreciate a little more deeper conversation. And I've been
Yeah.
hyped up diving into the record. I'm like, oh, this is one we can go into. So thank you so
Cool.
much for your time,
Nice.
my friend. And
Awesome,
hopefully,
bro.
sorry, Zoom's weird. You get all the weird lag, but like, hopefully, catch you in Cleveland sometime.
Yeah, absolutely, bro. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks. Take care.
See you, man. Bye now.
Bye.
See ya.
Yo, Spike Spiegel here. You just listened to Zig of the Gig podcast. Keep riding the bebop. See you, Space Cowboy. Bang.